Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the weekly Watch This Breakdown. Hope you're all having a fantastic weekend so far. Just before we dive into this, just kind of, I guess, a quick forewarning that this probably will be a reasonably brief sort of breakdown compared to usual. Pretty much just going to kind of do the forecast for Euro dollar, pound dollar, and Aussie dollar for the week ahead. And I'm not going to dive too much into the prior price action, kind of for a couple of reasons. Basically, essentially, as you guys know, I'm trying to get this course finished and over the line by the end of this coming week, so around sort of 10th, 11th of September, and get that out to you guys, or as much of it as completed as possible before I go on holiday for a couple of weeks. So obviously I lost a fair amount of time where I've been ill the last week or two, but yeah, I've been able to get a lot done over this weekend and the last few days. So my primary focus has just been all in on that, on trying to get that done, and obviously to a high standard as well. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with where it's at so far. Got a lot I'm going to try and get done this week as well, just to kind of add a few more finishing touches to it. And then there will be plenty for you guys to get your teeth stuck into over the next few weeks. There is tons of what I believe to be pretty valuable content that I'm sure hopefully you guys can take a lot of value from and will enjoy. So yeah, just kind of spending this weekend just cracking on with that. So obviously apologies the last few weeks and couple of months, the market commentaries haven't quite been to the standards that I would typically want them to be personally. Obviously I haven't been that active in the community as well, posting daily markups and charts and whatnot, but obviously as you guys know, it's because I'm not being super active myself in the actual markets whilst I'm trying to get this done before the end of Q3 and Q4 really starts to take off, where when I come back from holiday I kind of want to get my main focus back into actual trading, right? So yeah, that's where I'm at this weekend. Just going to do kind of the forecast on these three pairs for the week ahead. Now, in terms of the actual price action this week and kind of the last few weeks, I've actually spent all of this morning recording three separate videos, all quite long. One on Euro dollar, one on pound dollar, and one on Aussie dollar. Pretty much going through all of that price action and kind of showing really clear-cut trade examples and putting all of the concepts that obviously we use together, essentially as part of videos within the actual course. So yeah, they will be ready for you to watch by the end of this week anyway. So yeah, apologies, hopefully you guys can understand why this may be a bit of a brief breakdown, surely just being a forecast, but you will get to see sort of the breakdown of the last few weeks price action across these three pairs in a hell of a lot more depth, almost an hour long on each of those, where we really break it down and take our time going through it. So yeah, rather than me kind of just rushing back through and doing kind of a piss poor job now, I think you guys will benefit from a lot more if you can bear with me and give me one more week's worth of patience. So with that said, let's have a quick look through Euro dollar. So yeah, as you guys are probably super bored of me saying every single week, we are stuck within this bullish weekly range, right? We've taken out that weekly low. We've tapped into whatever liquidity, so not liquidity, but demand should be left within that weekly and daily demand zone, right? And we have now started to see a bit more of a bullish follow through on the weekly chart. Now, my blind assumption is that we are going to try and form a higher low, and we are going to try and gun for these weak highs and ultimately try and form a higher high up here. But I have no idea at the moment. It could just be stuck within a range play where we're just sweeping lows and retracing, right? Sweeping highs and retracing, and we may just play around and start to form a bit of a complex range before we build liquidity on either side of the range, and eventually price picks which way it wants to go. But there's no point in trying to get complicated with forecasts. Let's just follow price action until it's going to lead us the way, right? And for now, we're still bullish. We've swept the low, we've tapped into liquidity, we're starting to break structure on the lower time frame. So yeah, I'm definitely favoring longs as things stand, but I'm fully aware that obviously this weekly range could break down to the downside, especially after coming off this real nice weekly supply zone at the top of the range. So do bear that in mind if you are looking to hold long positions and just kind of swing for the fences. Of course, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but just you have to be obviously cognizant and aware of the fact that we may not actually go on to form a weekly higher high. So daily chart, we can see that even nicer, right? Big sweep of liquidity tapping into that sweep zone over here, and now we have started to break structure to the upside. So whether you're viewing kind of this as just a minor daily high and whether this is the swing high, right? Either way, we kind of we haven't quite managed to break above this high. This is the high that really I want to see go on the daily chart. I want to see a daily close above this high before I really start being convinced that we are going to push up higher. Potentially we could tap into here and reverse, but I think that's unlikely. I do believe if we can get a decent close above here, then we can start, really looking for these big targets higher up in the range, or potentially getting that weekly higher high. We do of course have that daily flip zone down here, right, where we came into supply, we reacted, then that reaction failed, and then we got that change of character, and we broke structure there to the upside. So it would be nice if we got a nice pullback down into around this sort of region here, where we could look for that higher low to then obviously take out those equal highs and try and run price a bit higher. Or of course we have that sweep zone down here at the origin. So now that we're kind of struggling to break that high, I believe we wicked it by about a pip or two. Let's actually see what's the high on that. 19087, and that is what was that, 91? I've already forgotten, and that was 87. Yeah, so we've what's that, 3 pips? I was just checking it's not 18. No, that's micro pips, right? God, my brain's absolutely fried. Anyway, regardless, right, we've just about wicked it. So yeah, we may see a bit of a pullback here, or it could literally just be a short-term closure just to build kind of that liquidity, and then we may just shoot up straight away. So kind of for the week ahead, I'm kind of favouring more now, trying to play that pullback. And look to play that into some nice areas of demand where we can look for the high low, but of course proceed with caution with trying to short this, because we are going against a hell of a lot of momentum after a big high time frame sweep into a very strong high time frame level of demand. Because if there are lessons to be learned from this move here, right, if you're trying to short this the whole way up every time we come to every little supply or sweep of liquidity, right, like just here, right, we just kind of swept those highs, we had that daily retrace, and then we just smashed up for another few weeks. So yeah, if we start to break down the lower time frames, then I'm happy to play the pullback, but at the same time those pro trend trades can end up just going on and on and on. So do be careful if you start to take a few losses trying to short this. Just sit in your hands, right, and wait for those pro trend trades, and I'm sure you will probably have a lot less pain that way. So 4-hour chart for me, we got that break of structure over here, and then we had a bit more of a decent pullback, and then this came as another break of structure. This is just a minor pullback for me, and again same. So for me, that's the 4-hour range that we're playing within. So obviously the EQ being there, we have this kind of nice origin range at the bottom, which of course I would love to get long from if price did pull back that far, but also keeping an eye on sort of this wick here. But yeah, you can even just take that whole range, right, and as soon as price taps into that 4-hour range, if you start to get your your entry models, then you can look to then come up and take these highs here. And yeah, there's not really too much to add in terms of the 4-hour chart. Obviously got some old demand zones on if we were to come a little bit lower, but for me, if we did come that low, then the 4-hour chart would have switched bearish, so potentially that would be when we are then starting to come down for these lows again. Obviously if we just continue, we may just pull back a little bit on Monday and just continue this bullish trend, and then actually get that daily break of structure. Of course, then we can start to dig in left and look for where price may react. Kind of the cleanest, most obvious zone from a 4-hour chart perspective would be this wick up here. Just sync that up properly. What I like about that as well is it was a zone, right, that took liquidity when it created that zone to get that sweep zone, right, so that obviously increases the probability of that zone playing out even more. And of course we've got this zone up here. I'm not going to draw on every single one. What I typically do, when there's quite a few areas obviously price could reject, but there's not kind of super clear candles there, is I just let the market show me a way. I'll wait for price to go up there whenever it happens, if and when it happens, right, and then if I start to see kind of those aggressive changes of character on the M15, or even the M1 selling off sharply, just go look left, investigate it. Doesn't make sense what it's reacting to. If you're happy enough, go check on a 15-minute. If it's refined, makes a bit more sense, right, then you can use that for confidence to start to play those pullbacks. So yeah, lastly, just digging into the M15 time frame. Again, I've covered pretty much all of this price action in real depth in that course video, which you guys will see shortly, so I don't kind of want to go over it now. You'll get a lot more value from that video. But yeah, in terms of Friday, we obviously had I believe it was NFP, right, came back down into a few areas of demand here, playing within this bullish range. Price ended up rejecting the kind of decisional flip zone that led to taking out this minor supply zone here, that led to that break of structure. So we came back into there, we chopped around. There was a bit of an entry in there. I think kind of as it rejected within here, and then yeah, if you kind of had left your stop open. Actually, I believe the way this candle formed, yeah, if I'm not mistaken. So I think there would actually, we'll take a quick look. There was essentially an M1 entry there, right, after we rejected this level, and you could have potentially held that long into NFP if you so wish to do so. That fits your risk profile, and I believe it shot up and then it came back down, so you would have had opportunity to bank some profits in there. But yeah, for now, playing within this range here, obviously this big wick. Whoops. this big wick here and this wick here. So this is really not ideal trading conditions, but obviously still bullish. Potentially we could come down in towards this wick and then look for longs. That's obviously the pro trend trade, but just be aware, right, we could start to break down, get that M15 bearish trend change, and then we can look for price to come down into these lower 4-hour and 15-minute levels. So, you can be a bit aggressive. You could potentially look for price to come up into these wicks or potentially any of these sort of substructure 15-minute zones if you fancy it. Right, they're obviously valid areas, and then you could look to try and anticipate that bearish trend change. But yeah, just be aware it's not great price action. If you really kind of want to be a bit more conservative and wait for those higher strike opportunities, then I would probably wait and see if price is going to break out of this range first, and then look for price to pull back into the supply, or at least look for those pro trend longs a bit further down within the wick. I'd be more inclined to kind of just let price action kind of settle itself on Monday. But yeah, I did say we'll take a quick look at that kind of trade if you wanted to trade into NFP. Obviously you could have played that counter trend pullback, kind of mitigated this supply. Right, on Friday we then came down into this area of demand. We had direct reaction and we went down there. There wasn't really an M1 entry there. It'd be more of a kind of a 15-second entry for me. Not really a way you could have caught that on the M1 for the way that I kind of view flip zones. But here you can see, right, because we take out the low on the 15-second. On the M1 it never closed, it was just a wick, but that would be the low, right? So we've come into demand, we break that low, then we pull back in, and then you can enter at market to then run the low there. But yeah, quite an aggressive trade. And then the one I kind of want to focus on is that potential NFP trade you could have looked at. So yeah, obviously another flip here as well. Had this supply, price came into it, right, reacted, there's your reaction, there's your change of character and the failure. So then there's your demand, that fractal refinement within the wick. Price comes into it, it reacts, it pushes down. Again, you don't have to have all of these zones drawn on. Just look at for where price starts to react. Then you can look left, figure out, make the story then. Okay, it makes sense. Obviously, it's ideal with the M1, you already have them drawn on, just so you don't have to keep messing around, and you have enough time to actually draw your zone on and get in the entry. Fortunately, this time you would have had a fair amount of time to get back if you wished to take that trade. But yeah, quite an aggressive trade. The more pro trend trade, which probably would have been a bit better, but even then I probably wouldn't recommend it, is trading before NFP, was where we came into that M15 flip zone. Right, but again, even if you didn't have it drawn on, when you notice price sweeping lows like that, have an aggressive move in and aggressive move out, look left, see if it's a zone that makes sense, and there you go. Then you can actually build the story, and you can start to piece the puzzles together. So as we get that sweep and we push up, we get obviously a really nice M1 change of character there. And then let's see if we can see where the old flip was. So we have this refined M1 supply zone, right, from that buy before the sell that broke the low, and then you can see where price came into it, it pulled down with that wick, and then that's where the demand stepped in, right, to break structure to the upside. So you can take that sell to buy wick like there, and then enter anywhere within the range. Let's see where 2 pips gives us. So yeah, we could have entered on the distal there with a stop just below the low. Obviously you would have to then just being patient whilst price is shopping around, which is generally what happens before a large news announcement, as people started to kind of just exit their positions, and then obviously targeting the high for about 7R with a 2 pip stop, and then that peaked around 20R or so, and then yeah, eventually came back down and would have swept you out. Yeah, then we swept this low here. Then if you want to kind of play the aftermath of the news, you could do, where if we take a look at this on the 15-second, this may be something you want to dive into, where you don't want to trade pre-news, but maybe you want to trade the after news reaction, as generally, yeah, there will be opportunities there, but you probably are going to have to dig lower than the M1 to kind of get that. So obviously we sweep all of this liquidity and kind of look at it across the actual range low there. Do we take out? Yeah, we take that range low out. There wasn't really a flip here for me, just more kind of standard breaker structure. There's a low, so that's the high, and then we came back into that 15-second demand, and then you could have traded that move away for a cheeky post NFP trade, which is probably more that I would advise if you kind of want to trade around news. Kind of post news is probably a bit easier, because at least the volatility is not likely to be as high like we did have over here. If you do see something that sets up, makes sense. So yeah, that wraps up euro dollar. Obviously, like I said, don't keep repeating myself, but yeah, I did go in the price action in a lot more depth. So yeah, you guys will get access to that video fairly shortly. In terms of the forecast, kind of already said my outlook for it. we're kind of at a bit of a crossroads at the moment, right? Because the daily very much could reject this area. That could be just being a minor high, and then we could come down for another sweep of the lows. But I kind of like the way that we swept those lows. We've had pretty much a V-shaped move to the upside, a lot of momentum. So as long as the 4-hour chart is remaining bullish, all shorts for me would kind of be that counter trend shorts, playing the 4-hour pullback into these areas of demand, into discount, and then potentially looking for those longs, to try and push this up higher. Pound dollar weekly chart, we've kind of been stuck near this weekly supply zone, kind of similar to euro dollar for quite a while, and just expecting to see, are we going to get finally a deeper pullback down into kind of more the depths of this leg here. We did sweep liquidity the other week and tried to push up. We didn't have any real follow through. We've come back and we're kind of just chopping around. So for me, the weekly chart's pretty horrible. There's not really too much I can read into there. Daily chart's a bit more clear for me because we were stuck within this very clear larger daily range, right? That being the high, that being the low, very, very poorly drawn, but you guys know what I'm on about. We then came into that wick refinement, which was a very clear 4 hours sweep zone, right? We took that liquidity there, and then we broke that daily internal lower high to make that daily higher high, which essentially was that 4-hour higher high. We then pulled all the way back into the extreme, right? That daily wick is a 4-hour zone, and now it's looking like we're making that 4-hour higher low to then push up and try and take these highs here, right, where we have these relatively equal highs. So yeah, my bias would definitely be for more upside to this, looking for first targets to see if we can take out these highs. There obviously will be some points within supply in here where price may pull back, look for those higher lows to then try and run these highs and potentially try and finally make that daily higher high there. So 4-hour chart being a little bit more loose kind of with my definition of structure on pound dollar. I'm kind of looking at the more major swings in price. So when we did take out that high, this kind of was all one massive large pullback for me down into the 4-hour zone there. But even if you are a bit more kind of aggressive with your structure and you were looking at, that being your low, this being your low, so on and so forth, we would now be bullish. So either way, both kind of ways would be viewing this as bullish price action. And yeah, I would just be looking at kind of these areas. There's quite a few flip zones here that price took out, right? We took out this area here, we reacted and we pushed up. So that could be a nice area for price to pull back into Monday if we just get a shallow pullback, and then we can look to target this area of supply here, but ultimately looking for price to come up and take out the actual larger swing high there. So for me at the moment, all supply is just to facilitate a pullback, and I'll be looking at any of these areas of demand, to look to get long and try and catch those higher lows. And that's it. Pretty simple forecast for me for pound dollar. Let's take a quick look at the 15-minute chart. Yeah, kind of pretty clear trend here, right? Took the high, that would be that move there. So ideally we see price come into here, get that change of character, get our M15 flip, and then we can start to look to target those highs, and beyond. It's, so on and so forth. Don't have too much else to add to that. And then Aussie dollars had super clean move lately. If we go on here and go on the weekly chart, kind of annoyed at myself for not just setting a limit order here. It looks like the easiest trade in the world, right? So yeah, weekly chart, kind of again, however you define a trend, you might be a bit more loose, and you may have literally viewed this as one big push down. That is a pullback to form a lower high, and another move down. For me, that's a bit more of a monthly move. I definitely view that as a break of structure. That as a pullback. That as one push up. So I'd be a bit more inclined to view that as my high low. That is my higher high, and this was one large weekly pullback to facilitate that higher low. So now we could potentially look to gun for that weekly high and get that weekly higher high. So it's looking pretty clear cut for that. Potentially, it's still valid just as long as you're consistent. You could view that as that low and the weekly switching bearish. I'll kind of view that more as a daily move. So yeah, at the moment, I think we could have a weekly high low in place. That's a very aggressive retrace there with that weekly change of character as well. Obviously, that means the daily has now switched bullish. So yeah, it's looking pretty damn bullish at the moment. We came into that weekly zone. There was a couple of zones I was looking at. One, the sweep of liquidity, or two, what do we have? We have this minor supply zone here because it took that low. Price came into that supply zone. It reacted, but it failed to take out the low. It failed to do its job, and then price came in. So yeah, within that wick is a nice daily flip zone, which we can refine as well, but we'll dive down there in a minute. And then price has had that almost V-shaped move straight up, and now we've had that daily closure above. So what that means for me is old supply zones simply come points just to facilitate pullbacks, right? Potentially come back down into these daily areas of demand to then try and catch those higher lows. Yeah, so on and so forth. Pretty simple stuff. Very, very clean price action on Aussie dollar lately. Maybe a pair that I might have to put a little bit more focus on for when they come into those higher time frame areas of value. But yeah, this was the 4-hour zone, right? That inside bar at the origin of the move that led to that reaction failing and led to that break of structure. So we came into there. There was a couple of nice entries here on the 15-minute. which again I've covered in depth in a recent video, so I won't dive into those for now. And then yeah, just any old areas of supply where you see price react, it validates that that was a decent area of supply. So then you know that we now have a flip. Obviously price didn't pull back to it, but these can all be used at future points, right? That took out old areas of supply again, right? Reaction, failure of that reaction, right? The supply to demand flip, again another reaction, right? Because you know this is a valid 4-hour inside bar, but price didn't react to it, so I only care really where the reactions occurred, right? So that's why I've got that fractal refinement left on. Price reacted and pushed up, so now I'll be looking for this for price to come into here, or again kind of this last one was the last point where price reacted before it broke that daily high, so kind of anywhere within that range is a decent area to look for longs, but obviously the deeper into discount we come, ideally the better. So at the moment we're in that old daily supply zone, obviously the 4-hour refinement as well, which we've tapped into, so that can be a good time now to look for those 15-minute changes of character to start to play those pullbacks and potentially take profits from any of these 4-hour zones where we eventually could get that higher low. So yeah, I've drawn on a kind of a few sort of more of the obvious 4-hour old supply zones, but yeah, just looking for when price comes into here to potentially play those pullback reversals if you wish to do so. And that would kind of be just the general areas I would be keeping an eye on. But I think price action is pretty clear on Aussie dollar as things stand. Yeah, I would just expect the daily to keep now trending to the upside. But obviously we can keep an eye on those old supply zones, especially on the weekly chart as well, up around here, where kind of that initial move started to kick back. But yeah, looking very, very bullish as things stand. So I will leave that there. Again, apologies, this was quite brief, bit of a kind of run and gun forecast for the week ahead. But yeah, I do just really want to crack on with the rest of the course and make sure that there's much content, as much of the content is in there as possible for you guys to start to work your way through over the next few weeks. So I hope you guys have a good week, and I will see you in the midweek on Wednesday. Cheers, guys.